Jared Polin, Fro Knows Photo.com. Ooh, let me turn my light on. Hello. And this week's photo of the week brings us another photo from college years. We're looking at 1999, maybe 2000. This is a photo of Greg, so it's 11 years old. And I took this photo for Greg, and then he took it and processed it and printed it, and then dodged and burned in the photo of the girls right here. This was a portrait. It was like a self-portrait assignment, but you could have help setting up certain things. So Greg asked me to take a portrait of him. As you can see, I filled the frame. It's not cropped. I shot everything. You know, it's amazing. I shot it. Whatever. Leave all this extra room on the side. It's great. This is the actual scan of the print that Greg made. So let me go through how he made this and what his idea was back then. He wanted a portrait of him taking a picture. So he's using his N90S, not a D90. So we're looking at film. He wanted me to take a picture, focus on the lens, or I don't even know where I focused. It looks like the hand's in focus and the Nikon isn't. I was supposed to focus on the end of the lens or something. So I focused on that, and he didn't even have the 70-200 yet. I don't think he was shooting the 2.8s at this point. But so what Greg had to do to process this, he had to develop the photo of his portrait first, while dodging out this area, meaning he had to cover it up so that the circle was left blank, wasn't exposed to any light at all, because if it was, it would get the lens, whatever was burned into the negative. So he made one exposure of his face, when he was printing it, then switch negatives and had to then dodge the rest of the image. Maybe not even dodge, because he probably lowered the enlarger, but he couldn't let any light spill outside this circle right here. So what he had to do was literally cover up the whole image except for this area and process or expose this area. I'm pointing to the screen again. I'm supposed to use my mouse. Exposing this area just to that negative so that you could actually burn two. It's a double exposure, basically. It's a double print exposure. It's not a double exposure when we shot it. It's a double exposure when he printed it. Now, there was no, let's make a new layer. Let's cut out the layer. Let's paste it right inside the lens. How simple is that? Yeah, it's simple now. Back then, it wasn't simple. What kind of computer was I using in '99? I think I still had my 486 DX66. I don't know. Was I still cranking that thing out? I don't know. Maybe I moved up to my Pentium 2 at the time. I don't even remember. But so Greg had to process this, and you can see even back then, Greg's prints didn't go boom. They were flat. They were flat. Look, because he printed this. You can see how flat. There's not a lot of contrast, and that's just how Greg printed. Even back then, he was a little more on the neutral side. So he probably didn't have a filter in on this, and I had a filter. I would use 3.5 filters to make my contrasts go boom, but he would not make his contrast go boom. But that's that. So let's zoom in here. You can see a little bit of how he dodged and burned. Oh, look at that. You can see the negative part of the negative sprocket holes are showing up right here from that frame. And you can actually see it a little bit outside where he wanted it, but it wasn't the easiest thing to do back then. It wasn't easy to just, say, hey, I just want to put this in there. You literally had to switch negatives and then lower the enlarger and then refocus it on another piece of paper and then do an exposure and make sure it's right, because if you get this exposure wrong when you're exposing the paper to light, then you have to start all over, to use proper English. You have to start all over, because then you have to print the one print right and then redo everything to get that right. So it was a massive process to do, and you can see how dirty the negative was. He didn't do an awesome job of cleaning the negative or spotting it later, because that's what all of this stuff is. And back then, we had an assignment back in college where the guy literally threw dirt all over a negative, went like this, cleaned it off, then put it into the enlarger and made like 60 prints for all the students. And we had to go in and we had to spot tone it to clean up the dust. And I kind of half-assed that one, because I'm like, sir, I make sure that my negatives are clean before I put them in the enlarger so that I don't have to worry about doing BS like this that you're telling me to do. And he's like, do it anyway. I'm like, fine. I'm going to do a half-tuchus job on it. So I did a half-tuchus job because I was stubborn, and that's what I did. So really what we had, there was spot toning. You took a very fine paintbrush just for spot toning, and you had this book of tones, And what you would do is dip in water and then dip in the tone, slightly touching it. It would turn, it would put ink on there, and then you'd go in, and the more water would be the lighter, the less water, the darker it would be, and you had to try to match tones. It wasn't easy. That's why I focused on making really clean negatives and making prints that were clean straight out. I used a lot of compressed air to clean the enlarger, to clean my negative, to make sure everything was good and right on. And, so this was a present to me. Greg gave me one of the prints. I dug back into the archives, pulled it out, and you can see that the border is how it was printed. Exactly how it scanned is how it was printed. The easel had these, you could use the easel and it would have the lines. That's why it's tight lines all the way around, because it would expose the negative right into here. And that's really all I have to say about that. But yeah, this was an assignment, helped Greg with, and then he had to process this, but that's giving you a look into it. At some point, I'm going to go into the darkroom and do start to finish for you guys, from loading the film to literally processing it to printing it, so you can get a feel for what we went through. So that's it. That's the photo of the week this week. Jared Poland, Fro Knows Photo.com. See ya.